What do you think the role of, like, stepping back a little bit now, you've graduated, etc. What do you think the role of a conservatoire has to play in generally feeding into the workforce and supporting their undergraduates and then their recent graduates? Do you have like any thoughts about that?
Yes, I mean, I think this is something that I'd actually had sort of conversations with different staff at RBC about this exactly, is that, is a conservatoire there to sort of regurgitate the same sort of musician that can play in the same way, which is, a very accomplished person, but is not particularly individual? Or, are they there to sort of harness people's individual talents and interests and sort of sculpt them, it helps sculpt them into their own sort of being, instead of sort of being a just different version of another of sort of the same way of playing. And I think especially when you're sort of in your first, second, and even sort of your third year at any conservatoire, there are sort of established ways and accepted pieces that are sort of seen to be benchmarks, and everyone sort of goes through it at the same point. So, you know, you, I in my year there were two other trumpet players. There was three of us all together, and even though we had different teachers, we'd at some point in the year all had played the same piece, and obviously the same teacher will probably tell you to play it in the same way as they tell their other students to play it. But what I think I really loved about Birmingham, like particularly the teachers I had while I was there, was that they were very open if you wanted to sort of let you play whatever you wanted. So quite early on, I sort of went away and found my own pieces and my own repertoire, and still made sure that I had my sort of muscle memory and my sort of brain around the sort of bread and butter pieces that sort of a trumpet player is expected to know and expected to sort of be able to whip out and play well at any sort of given moment. But I'd really try and spend a lot of my time finding my own pieces. And when it came to recitals, especially in my sort of third and fourth year, I really tried to make sure that everything I was playing was not going to be heard by anyone else. Anyone else at the audition panel were going to be listening to that week. I really tried to make sure that my program was completely different, which isn't the same for all instruments. Like, I lived with some string players, and that was a lot more regimented. Like, they had to play particular pieces for particular recitals,
Mm.
and or sometimes they could pick a second piece, but they'd all have to play the same first piece. And I think it's an interesting way of doing things, because obviously, from a teacher's perspective, once you find a way that works, that sort of gets your student over a problem, you're obviously going to use that method again. But then I think over time, you can sort of end up falling into a trap of, even if it's not working for them, because it worked for other people, I'm just going to keep going at it until it works. And yeah, I think especially playing a classical instrument, you're normally also told to buy certain tutor books, for example, that were written sort of in the 1800s and are sort of still deemed to sort of be the Bible for that instrument. But they were made at a time where the playing style sort of the time was very different, and you sort of find yourself having to adapt your way sort of through the book, and often just using the notes, like the actual music that's in it, instead of the actual descriptions of how to play it that are written in the book. I often found myself going, okay, this is a really good exercise to practice this, but I'm going to completely ignore what it says at the top of the page, because I know that I don't want to sound like that. Um, so yeah, I think it's an interesting sort of finding a good balance between what works and also how you can help your students do what they actually want to do and not just sort of what is expected of them.